Appreciate you joining me today. I hope you're having a good day. We are going to be looking at the account. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, the feeding of the 5,000. Today's hymn is the hymn, Nearer My God to Thee.
Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. E'en though it be a cross that raiseth me, still all my song shall be, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee.
Let's look at our passage now in John chapter 6. Verse 15, it says, Therefore, when Jesus perceived they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and went over the sea towards Capernaum, and it was already dark. Jesus had not come to them. Then the sea arose, because a great wind was blowing. Excuse me. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, It is I, do not be afraid. And then they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. One of the things we might notice about the passage, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. You can tell from the parallel accounts, he actually sent the disciples away. And so as we think about the hymn, Nearer My God to Thee, we recognize that Jesus would often withdraw himself into the desert and such places so that he could be nearer his God, nearer to the Father. And, for example, in the Garden of Gethsemane, as you have the 11 apostles, Judas had already gone out, and then he pulls apart Peter, James, and John, and he tells them to stay there and watch, and then he goes off by himself. And so we might think about that as we think about our own faith and drawing nearer to the Lord. Back to the account, it says there in verse 19, when they'd rowed about 3 or 4 miles, saw Jesus walking on the sea. The parallel accounts again says that they were straining against the rowing, and they had been rowing at this time for quite a while, several hours it looks like. And one of the things, as an application, we might make the point, the things that are hard for man are not hard for the Lord. They were straining against the oars as they were doing this, and there Jesus is, and he's just walking on the water. They weren't getting hardly anywhere. Jesus was having no problem at all. Parallel account, I think in Mark it actually talks about he was going to pass them by. But the things that are hard for man are not hard for God. Whether we're talking about creation, whether we're talking about the resurrection, whether we're talking about, as the Lord would heal on the Sabbath, one of the points we make, as the Jews talked about him working on the Sabbath. Well, he's the Lord, and so the Lord is always working, but also it's not hard for him. When he says to the man, take up your bed and walk, that wasn't hard for him to heal someone. He actually makes that point with the paralytic. In the paralytic, he says, take up your bed and walk. And then he says, which is more difficult? Or he says, your sins are forgiven you. Pardon me. He starts, your sins are forgiven. And then they say, well, who can forgive sins except God alone? And he says, well, which is more difficult? To say, say your sins are forgiven, or to say, take up your bed and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has power to forgive sins, I say, take up your bed and walk. Pardon me for kind of hashing that verse up. But the point is, it's not difficult for the Lord, any more than it was difficult for the Lord to walk across the sea. Then they willingly received him into the boat. Verse 21. We might consider that where was the Lord more safe? Out on the sea or in the boat? Like I said, he was going to pass them by. Where was he more secure? And the point I'm making is that he was no more secure in the boat than out of the boat. He was just as secure he was just as secure out on the water. So why get into the boat then? And it was for them. It was for their benefit. And then as he gets in, did you notice? And immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. Looks like it's another part of the miracle. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.